Hello, and thank you for joining us today on NCI Live. My name is David Groth, and I'm a technical sales specialist here at Network Center. Today, we're going to be talking about you've been hacked. Now what? Uh, Post-incident response. Joining me today is Joe Kingland. He's the CEO of Blue Team Alpha. Hello, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, David?
Great, great. Thanks for
Thanks for
joining
having
us.
me on.
Yeah, no problem. We're enjoying having you here. It's going to be a great discussion today. I'm going to remind everybody that is joining us live, you definitely may chat Joe and I your questions. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to talk about them and answer any of those questions that you have on the air. So, Joe, let's kind of dive right into it here a little bit. Why don't you tell us who is Blue Team Alpha and what you do for Blue Team Alpha?
Yeah, absolutely. So Blue Team Alpha is a deep cybersecurity and incident response firm. We do everything from pre-breach, during breach, and post-breach work. So we can help a company defend themselves. We help companies through incidents, through breaches, do full incident management, and then help them on the back end after the incident is done to shore up defenses and give guidance as to what to do next.
Yeah. So, that really brings up the question in today's topics. You've been hacked. Now what? I mean, but what does that really mean? We have to define, I think, some terms. What does that mean to be hacked? And I'm using the air quotes. What does that mean
Sure.
to
Yeah.
be? I think of it's a violation of your company's network data. A lot of pieces to that. So can we kind of define some commonalities there?
Yeah, we can kind of break that down. So there are different levels of what we would call cybersecurity events, and the first one is just an event. It's something that things that normally happen in your network, people with failed logins, those kinds of things. And then there are indicators of compromise, and that's usually when you see things that are really abnormal and start things that you want to look into a little bit more. And then those will lead to an incident, which an incident is when someone gains unauthorized access, or they have done something, denial of service, something of that sort. They've done something to your network or gained access to something in your network. And then the last part of that is a breach, right? So the breach, a data breach, is when the NIST definition is, it involves sensitive, protected, or confidential information, and that information has either been copied, transmitted, accessed, viewed, stolen, that kind of stuff. That's where you hit the breach level, and breach usually means legal. It means you have to do notifications. It means there's a lot more behind once you get to a breach. That's not a term that is thrown around lightly. And when you talk about hackers and being hacked, hackers are really anyone that attempts to gain access to a network, whether it's a white hat hacker that you pay, like a penetration tester, or a black hat hacker that's like an attacker and actually trying to get to your network for nefarious purposes. So so just the word hacker, you can
way generic.
It's very generic, and my wife, the lawyer, will tell me that hacking is always bad, but the cybersecurity expert in me, always counters back, but that's not exactly the case.
And I will say, in past iterations of NCI Live, we've talked to different experts, but it sounds to me from the definitions you've just given that a hacker could be really even just an employee that's doing unauthorized access, and they're not necessarily a traditional hacker. Somebody sitting in the basement going,
right,
I'm going to grab the data. They could just be an employee that's taking data out of a system that they're not authorized to. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. Yeah, those are what we call insider threats. So, people inside the organization that are violating policies, taking data, or threatening the confidentiality, availability, or the integrity of that company's data or its customers' data or employees' data.
Certainly.
So if you want to kind of break that down in a scenario, think of, you have cybersecurity events, right? Somebody's logging in, they forget their password. It, triggers an event, says, wrong password was used on XYZ
Right.
computer at this time. That's a cybersecurity event. An indicator of compromise would be you see a bunch of those, a whole
Right.
bunch of them really fast. That's an indicator of compromise. That's something weird. You see, 30 of those in a row, like, that's odd. Either this person really doesn't know their password or somebody's maybe trying to guess it. An incident would be if someone actually gained access to that computer, and act, not, maybe there wasn't anything particularly important on that particular computer, or it didn't have access to something that was, that was particularly sensitive. So that would be an incident. And then a breach would be, say that's your backup machine, right? The computer that backs up all the data from all over the network, and it includes, credit card data or PII or health records, those kinds of things, social security numbers, driver's license, that kind of stuff. Now that they've gained access to it, that, they steal it, they do anything with it, that's a breach. So that's kind of how you walk through the different steps and levels.
Certainly.
Just at a
Certainly.
very high level, quick glance.
Certainly. Yeah. And that kind of maps out the anatomy, if you will, of an event, and depending on the severity, right, where it starts and does it grow into something. Right?
Yes. Yep.
So
and there's lots of ways to stop, to kill that chain.
yep.
So that's just, there's lots of ways to do it, but we're here to talk about what happens after a breach.
Exactly, and that was going to be my next place. So now let's say, okay, the worst has happened. You've got full scale. It's full scale breach. We've reached the end. Full scale breach. Passwords have been compromised. We've got people have administrative access, and data is either breached, lost, what have you. So can you take us through a typical response to an event like that?
Yeah. So if there's,
and again, very generic, what would be a typical response?
Yeah, absolutely. So if there's a full on breach, what really needs to happen is two things. The first thing is you need to actually call someone to start containing the breach. Start doing that as fast as possible. In these scenarios, time really matters. It's it's very, very important that you get started very quickly, because the faster you can gain containment, the less information is going to be stolen, the less it's going to be, is going to be breached, and it could result in far fewer fees and invoices later down the road, right? It may save the business if you
Not
can,
unlike the fire department.
Early enough, right? Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like calling the fire department. The second thing you need to do is, again, if this is a full-on breach, is you need to have an attorney ready to go that can put everything that is done under confidentiality. So attorney-client privilege. So, and again, that's in a full-on breach. If there's credit card information or PII or PHI that appears to have gone out the door, that's very, very important. You want that confidentiality in place.
I was going to say, can I interrupt you for just a second? When you say an attorney-client privilege, between which parties? It
should really be between. Normally, it's a tripartite, so it'd be between the attorneys, your incident response team, and you, the business, the client,
the client, the business. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's. I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's important to get in place, right? If you, for all the insurance people on the phone, I'm sorry, I'm going to break your heart right now, but they call your incident response people first. call them first, because they're the ones that are going to help get you out of the mud the fastest.
Mhm.
You know, we can generally work with the insurers on the back end,
Mhm.
but realistically, time, like I said, time matters. So get those people in inside of your building and get them working on that as fast as possible. I always say, you know, if your house is on fire, you don't call your insurance broker before you
Mhm.
call the fire department,
And
right?
I would, if you don't mind, I would add to that and say, I don't think you're going to break their hearts, because in truth, if you call the response team first, you're probably going to save the insurance company a lot of money.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
really, in what they have to pay out, you may resolve the breach or at least contain it within a very short period of time. Whereas if they're sitting there on the phone talking about this, that, and the other, the breach is going wild, right?
right. Yep.
And the more time is money. I'm sorry to keep using platitudes, but it's true,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
So,
It is.
so,
So no, that's definitely, you know, those are the just kind of from an initial response, you know, what really needs to happen. You know, have have someone ready to go from your incident response and incident management all the way to your, you know, your legal team, just so you can pick up the phone and call them when you need them.
mhm.
That's You don't want to have to do contracts and paperwork and stuff all in that
So,
in the
yeah,
middle of all of that
right. That would
that's
be
already going on.
not
We do
good.
it every day, but still,
Mm.
it's not fun. If you can get it done beforehand, do.
If so, if I'm hearing I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like there's a few moving pieces here that really shouldn't be thought of last minute. So
Correct.
I'm thinking that it's leaning more towards a thought out plan, much like a disaster recovery plan, and
Yep.
uh, that's something that should be thought out, planned out ahead of time. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. If time allows, right, we always want to have instant response plans drafted for a company. You can, you know, put companies on retainer so that they're just ready to go, and get all the contracts done, everything like that. That's You can get all that stuff done beforehand. So then when you need, you can automatically get started.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so that's absolutely best practice. In reality, we also see that a lot of companies, you know, don't do that beforehand, and we end up, you know, getting everything done in you know, live action. But
Right.
you know, the fact is, legal's not going to do all the diligence and the review that they normally would, right? Some of those pieces that you would
Yeah.
normally go through in you know, in contract negotiation generally get thrown out the window,
Right.
you know, in those situations. But yeah, no, that is it's very important to have a plan,
Hmm.
if and practice it, right, if you can.
And
So
plan is a four-letter word for most people. They don't want to plan. They just want to it's fine. We'll deal with it later and
yep,
somebody will fix it for us, right? Yeah, no,
yep.
that's not a problem. There's obviously an opportunity cost there, right? That
Hmm.
when that happens, there's not usually going to be, based on what again what you've said, there's not going to be time to go through those machinations of, we got to get the
Right.
attorney, we got to get the incident response team, which incident response team and which people within that team,
Right.
and who in our organization is qualified to do X, Y, and Z, and maybe there's multiple moving pieces, and everybody's running around chicken with their head cut off.
Yep.
Meanwhile, things are just getting worse,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And there's, you know, there's even subsets inside of incident response and management, right? So
Mm.
we're an incident management and response firm. So that means we manage an incident from end to end, from, you know, the minute it comes in all the way through when all the businesses stood back up and, you know, everything's back to operational. You know,
Sure.
you get incident commanders that understand what they're doing and have MBAs and understand business, not just cyber. And
Right.
not every firm is gonna, you know, is gonna do that. They're gonna, you know, take care of the threat, go threat hunting, eradicate the threat. They might restore your data if it's encrypted, and then that's kind of it. But there are a lot of other pieces. What do you do with the data
Right.
after you get it back? So being able to talk to and vet whoever it is that you're looking at before this, and just really understanding the capabilities of the team,
Right.
so you know that you're covered is important. If you want more of a white glove experience, like there are companies that are really good at that. And if you want more people that are just selected to do certain parts, they can do that too. So, but yeah, and that's really the most critical thing is get started fast, right? Anything you can do ahead of time is is going to save you that time in an incident, and that time, I mean, really, really counts. It really matters. So
Yep.
yeah, if you can at all, do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to just interject here 1 second, and wanted to let everyone know that if you, again, still, if you are watching us live, please feel free to send us questions. I mean, we are talking to one of the foremost experts here that can definitely tell you everything there is to know about incident response. So have a definite opportunity here to ask your questions. So if you're watching us live on either YouTube or LinkedIn, so feel free to send in those questions.
Yeah,
Okay, so
absolutely.
we were talking about incident response plans. So can you walk us through, and I hate to use the word typical, but can you walk us through a sample? Sample. Walk us
Mhm.
through a sample incident response plan
Yeah,
that might be
so
included.
yeah, it's going to be, who is going to participate in an incident, what defines an incident for that company, right? So how do you define what an incident is and when you enact that plan? Who's involved, what people's roles are, like, it's going to be an executive committee, but there are also going to be some technical people in there too.
Sure.
Your director or your systems analyst probably isn't going to be the person that authorizes, $700,000 in Bitcoin to be purchased.
Right.
So you need to make sure that those roles are clearly defined. Have a plan for who to call, obviously, and understand when you're going to call them, and really just having those ducks in a row where you know exactly who's going to be participating, who you're going to call in the event, when you're going to call them, right?
Hmm.
And then just understanding what the next steps are going to be in the
Right.
incident process. Because as you go through, there are some just kind of basic overarching steps that happen in every incident. And
Hmm.
so understanding in your plan, who is going to be involved in those different decisions, at a high level. You can't playbook the entire thing out for every
No,
single
no,
incident, but these are
no.
broad stroke type things, just
That's what I
understanding
was going after. Yeah,
who it's
yeah.
who it's going to be, what you're going to ask of them.
I think one thing too to bring up here, anyways, in our in Network Center in NCI's group, we deal a lot with small to medium enterprise companies, but we have
Mhm.
a few people that we deal with that are enterprise customers,
Yep.
and I think a lot of things that get short shrift are small to medium enterprise but they are
Yep.
the ones that get targeted the most. So
Yep.
this is also a fair thing that applies to small to medium enterprise companies too, the 500 and lower. Is
Oh
that a
yeah,
fair statement?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's as important, if not more important, because normally the companies the companies that are 500 people and lower generally don't have the security budgets of the larger organizations. So one thing that I always like to kind of talk about, or at least mention, is people put a lot of their money in prevention and detection, right? So
Hmm.
there's kind of, when I talk about Blue Team Alpha, you asked me what we do, right? I said
Hmm.
we work on pre-breach, during breach, and post-breach, right?
Hmm.
So people will put all their money in pre-breach. They'll, you
Ounce
don't
of prevention, pound to cure, right?
right, and then
Hmm.
you don't really put money during breach unless you have one, but then planning for, right, that post breach. So you've got to cover both ends of the spectrum. What happens, how do we stop it? How do we find it? How do we detect it? How do we minimize our damage? One end of the
Mhm.
spectrum. The other
Right.
end of the spectrum is all of that failed. Now what?
So,
So, and there are, you know, hundreds of shades of gray in the middle of
mhm.
those two ends, those two bookends.
Yep.
And what I really try to emphasize with folks is make sure you have both bookends.
Yep.
Make sure you have the stopgap for when all of your prevention and detection doesn't work.
When?
There is no
When?
silver bullet,
Yep.
right? These companies, Uber just got hacked, right?
I saw that.
They have a
Yep.
massive security budget, and they were doing, generally speaking, the right things.
Mhm.
So, and if you're in the that small, upper small, lower mid market, don't think that you can just buy all the prevention and detection things and that's going to cover you. You have to have the other end. That means
Right.
instant response plans, that means an IR team, and it means cyber insurance, right? That's
Yep.
to cover the rest.
So
um
I do want to interject here. We do have a question
yeah,
from LinkedIn. So on the physical side,
yeah.
then I think you and I talked about this briefly offline. That on the physical side, when an incident occurs, I'm assuming, do you immediately disconnect the internet connection, shut down your switches, and shut down your servers? Your
So
thoughts?
um do not shut down the machines. We never want that to happen, because a lot of times there's evidence, forensic evidence, that's running in memory. And when you reboot the machine, that all goes away. So to answer the question, disconnect the network connection. A lot of times, yeah, we'll instruct people to go in their switch closets and just unplug the switches, like remove the power from the switches.
Hmm.
But in virtual environments and other areas, that's not exactly possible. So either turn the NICs off or
Hmm.
go and unplug the cables from the back of the servers. But
Hmm.
if you're looking at a floor of of machines,
Right.
or a server closet with top of rack switches or something like that, pulling the power from the switch is way faster.
Yep.
So so we go with that method. But if it's
And
only a
that,
few machines,
right.
so only a few machines, and you have physical access to it, yeah, just pull the cable
Yeah.
out of the network
But
jack.
that is an important thing, not to just go willy-nilly and start shutting it. Oh my gosh, shut it down,
Yeah,
because there's
yeah,
an important thing that can be gained from
and
that.
it's logical. Like, to most people, they would say, yeah, well, I want to, I want to stop this from happening, so I'm just going to shut it down. Close the
Right.
lid on my laptop real fast,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
But that's
Yep.
that's actually, it's gonna hurt us on the back end. We'll have to do more forensics work than we
Right.
would have
Right.
probably had to in the first place. So
So,
good.
I can see we're really getting into some stuff here, and it's really fun. But I want to keep covering a couple things. That one of the things are, what are some challenges when creating an incident response plan? We've talked a lot about the different pieces of it and who's involved,
Yeah.
but what are some of the problems that you see or challenges that companies might experience in creating such a plan?
Usually it's getting buy-in at the right levels. So
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the different the different people that are going to be involved in the planning sessions are in the room and they're taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks don't don't see the need to have an instant response plan. I think if you're watching the news and paying attention at all to what's going on in the cyber world, hopefully that is diminishing. But in reality, it's a very small percentage of businesses that have instant response. I mean, in the national average is still only slightly above 30% of businesses actually even have cyber insurance in the first place. So if they don't have
Right.
cyber insurance, the 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 reality that they're going to have an instant response plan is pretty low.
Slim. That
Yeah.
does bring up a good point. What is cyber insurance's role in all of this? I mean, we've mentioned it several times, but not specifically what their role is in the incident response. At what point do they get involved? What is their true role in this? I mean, we
Yeah.
all know we need insurance, but why? What does it
So
have to do with incident response?
it's really your stopgap from a financial from the financial side. I'm not a broker, not licensed, so I can't give insurance advice, obviously. But
Yes.
but really, it's the stopgap, right? So you're going to cover a certain amount of risk, by putting instant response firm on retainer or and a legal counsel on retainer and those kinds of things. So you're going to address some of the risk kind of up front. Normally, that's what normal businesses would do, and then but then you get cyber insurance, and that cyber insurance is really the stopgap to, if it's really getting wild, really getting out of control, that's their role. Um, we do always want to notify them of incidents, big incidents and breaches, but they're certainly not your instant response plan. They're like,
Right.
if your plan is, I got cyber insurance, so if I get hit,
Yeah.
I'm just going to call them. That is not an instant response plan. And times where that can really, bite you in the butt is if, say, you have an incident and it doesn't even, the response doesn't even touch the deductible. So you've got a $20,000 deductible on your cyber plan, and it took 10 grand to actually just resolve it. Now you've reported it to your insurance, and now the cyber carriers are involved in all that, so that's going to come up on your renewals and all that other stuff, right? But in the end, they weren't able to help at all. You're still paying that out of pocket. You still paid that deductible for that incident.
Sure.
So that's why I say it can bite you in the butt if that's the plan. So
Right.
make sure you make sure you have one, and and um and
So
we'll get
it's an add-on. It's an add-on, but it is
we'll get
not a
them
plan.
involved when when it's appropriate, when the time is right. If we know it's going to be way past the deductible, we get them involved right away. That's get them rolling, get started, because they do approve. They, generally speaking, they approve invoices and quotes and things
Sure.
during the process. But getting them involved really early is, in an incident, it can take a lot of time away from actually solving the problem. So they'll make you stop and wait.
So really, two questions then that I want to kind of bring this full circle here.
Yeah.
At what point would you consider, now that we've gone through the plan and what event and all that, at what point would you consider an event resolved? And then what do we do after the event? And prevention and all that? Because we talked about the ounce of prevention, pound of cure kind of fallacy.
Yeah.
But what do we do after the event? So what happens when we say it's done, and then what do we do after that event?
I mean, really, to say it's done, it's going to depend on the business, but at a really broad stroke, you obviously containment and eradication have to be done of the original threat, right? And then the business needs to be functioning at the level that it was prior to the event. So all the system, if you're able to service your clients, you're able to conduct your business, you are able to, do everything that you can do, to the best of the response's ability, right? So sometimes data is lost, sometimes systems don't come back, right? And it's gone, right? And it's just gone. There's nothing else to be done there. But really, we call the incident completed once we've got the threat actor taken care of, and the business is functioning as close to the level that it started at, right, before the incident happened.
Right. Gotcha.
And one thing I do want to mention is, we're talking about what happens after a breach, and there's a great graphic out there of there's three jars, and one jar is, it's got gold coins up to about the 10-15% mark, and it says security spending before a breach. And then there's a middle jar that's security spending during a breach, and this thing's overflowing, right? There's money coming off the top of it.
Oh yeah.
And then the third jar is security spend after the breach, and it's back down to that like little 10% mark. And so what I want to emphasize with folks is, if you do get a breach, if you do have an incident, and you're lucky enough to survive it and you're lucky enough to retain your customers and keep your reputation and continue to grow, don't go back to the way that it was before, right? You start looking at ways, to count your blessings, right? and,
Yep.
and
Yep.
start to and start to take a look at, like, what happened, how can you prevent that in the future?
Right.
Get a really
Make
good
that
security
plan.
advisor on your side to help you shore that up, because 80% of businesses that get hit once get hit again. 80%. It this
80%.
like it
It's
is
not
not
if, it's
uncommon.
when.
It's
It's not if,
very
it's when.
common.
Yeah.
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 So just when you end one incident, honestly, sounds terrible, but it's just the truth. Start getting ready for the next one.
Yeah.
Because the
Yep.
attackers sell your data. They trade it. They do whatever they can do with that data to maximize the access that they have or had and the information.
Gotcha. Joe, this has been great, but we're actually at the end of our time together. We could talk. This has been really very informative. I've learned a lot about the different things of what we can do after a security incident and so on, and it's been great to talk to you. I'm excited, actually. Blue Team Alpha is actually going to be at our annual Envision conference, and someone from your company, I believe Dan Wolford, will be speaking on the impact of cybersecurity in the Ukraine and so on. So that's actually coming up November 8th. It's free to attend. It's all day. You can either do it in person or virtually. So and those 110 can register at the netcenter.net/Envision22 if you'd like to attend. Also, those of you that are watching remotely, watching us live, excuse me, feel free to check us out on the web at www.netcenter.net, or you can email us at info@netcenter.net, or please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell for notifications when we do go live again, which we do every 2 weeks with a new topic. Joe, again, thank you for attending. I do have one last question for you that I like to ask, especially of security professionals. What is your favorite scene or movie having to do with security, cybersecurity specifically?
Well, I think I'd probably go, is it Swordfish with Hugh Jackman?
Okay.
And where he's the hacker, and he's got, this giant room, and all it is Matrix looking green screens where he's just pounding away.
Yep.
I think every cybersecurity person that I know would love to have one of these deep layers, like the
control room with all the screens. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you there.
Where we could go and control our empires.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, thanks again, Joe, for joining us. And thanks everyone out there for joining us here on NCI Live. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, David.